To Nino's Corner.tv. I'm joined with Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi is a New York Times bestseller, PhD in political science at Harvard. And Jerome Corsi has a website called Gods5Stones.com where they figured out the algorithm. They figured out the cheat. And this, like, you caught these people cheating in real time, correct?
We caught them. They never thought they'd get caught. And the website is GODS. There's no apostrophe. GODS. And then five is spelled out FIVE. And stones is plural. STONES. Gods5Stones.com. Now, what we found was really pretty startling that a computer genius, Andrew Paquette, had been analyzing the all of the data from the New York State Board of Elections voter election file, their voter registration file. And he found that it had been secretly coded with a cryptographic scheme. In other words, this is like the CIA may have come in there and put a code in the database which allowed them to create voters who don't exist, who look just like real voters, and they get legitimate state IDs. It's like a card marking scheme. Then you can hide them back in the database so nobody knows those stacked cards are there. And what the criminals do is they create thousands of these, 300,000 they can have of false voters that they know are there in the database. They look like regular good records. And when they need them for winning an election or stealing an election, they just say, well, I'm going to activate my false voters. They've got legitimate state IDs. They request a mail-in ballot. It's never mailed to them because you don't mail ballots to false voters. But what you do is you print that ballot and run it through the tabulation.
And you caught them cheating in real time?
Yeah, we did.
In this election?
In this election. We caught them in real time.
How many?
We caught them in previous elections, and we blocked it in this election.
Okay, wow. So that's how Trump won.
That's how Trump won. They did not steal the election because we caught them. Okay, and I'm just going to tell you.
Am I glad I saw your name pop up on my computer?
Yeah, you've got actually a scoop here. You've got a scoop that we blocked the steal by revealing all this. Okay, and I'm going to show you an article here. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. I'm going to pull it up, and we caught. Actually, we really got confirmed we were right because the group in Georgia, who are called the Georgia Nerds, the GANERDS _ real REAL. That's how you find them on Twitter, but now X. They said, okay, your algorithms are being used, and we've got data from early voting. Okay, so now we now have proof, and I published this in American Thinker, this article. We now have proof that the Georgia State Board of Elections creates illegal cloned voter IDs in the thousands, capable of being activated to create certifiable voters in an election fraud scheme that's consistent with embedding cryptographic codes in the State Board of Election voter registration databases. And as reported on our Gods 5 Stones website, gods5stones.com, Andrew Paquette, PhD, computer genius, he discovered cryptographic algorithms in New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and we also found them in New Jersey and Texas. We yet to report those in Hawaii. Okay, so we had the battleground states of Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona. They've all got algorithms. Okay, now what they mean is that, for instance, you can clone voter records in the state database. So some criminals, and probably with the assistance of the CIA has been interfering in elections internationally.
How were you involved in stopping this election steal? Was your team involved?
Yes.
You helped Donald Trump.
We helped Donald Trump win the election, yes. But it was not what we were really, this is a 501c3, and it was aimed not at helping a particular candidate. It was aimed at getting election integrity. In other words, for the purpose of the 501c3, we want to get rid of these algorithms because we think they're illegal to be there. And if there are intelligence agencies running it, they can run it in favor of Republican or Democratic candidates, whoever they want to be in there. So they can switch elections. They can steal elections, who's ever running these algorithms. Because see, what you do is, okay, I'm going to explain how it's done. Okay. First of all, the way it's done is that voter registration naturally is lined up. If you registered a few years ago, you should have a lower number than somebody who just registered, because your state board ID number as a voter should be a function of when you registered. In this scheme, they throw away when you were registered. That's no longer going to determine your number. You got all these voters, millions of them, and now you're going to order them according to an algorithm. Okay, this is like a card marking scheme. When you get the cards from the manufacturer, or a deck of cards, they come in cellophane and they're in a box, cardboard box. If you open them up, the cards are ordered from high card and high suit to the lowest card and the lowest suit. Now, if you take your mark cards and just insert them into that deck, it's obvious because those are the cards out of order. So the first thing you got to do in a card marking scheme is you got to shuffle the deck. So all the cards are random. And now when you put your mark cards in them, it's just going to look like another random card. Follow?
Right. I'm following you.
Okay, so everybody knows how I'm going to give you an analogy that makes this really understandable. That's how it works. Everybody, husband and wife, when they talk about their children, will say our first child, and they don't have to say they know who they're talking about. They know who their first child was. And they say our third child was good in algebra. Well, they know who the third child was. They don't have to name them.
Right.
If you go to the State Board of Elections, say, well, I'm sorry, your first child is number 1. Your second child is number 12. Your next child is number 23. Then your fourth child is 34. Your fifth child is 45. And your sixth child is 56. I just added 11 between each of your children. And I say to you, well, there are children who are number 2 through 11, but they're somebody else's kids from some other part of the database. And by the way, child number 3 and child number 7 don't exist. I made them up. Okay. And you can't tell the difference because if you look at cards 3 and 6, or you look at child 3 and 6, they look right. They've got a name, they've got, birth date, they've got an address. You don't know that record was cloned. It was a duplicate record with a different state board of identification number than your original state ID. Okay. And the original voter ID that these criminals use, they use in Georgia. So they take the deceased voters and they make them alive and give them a new number. They use voters who have moved from the state, voters who have been inactive, not voting for several years, and even felons.
What about the illegals?
They can do that too with the illegals, although the illegals are in a separate category because they're going to be allowed to vote as illegals. The state has to have made a rule that illegals can vote and not have an ID, not necessarily have any legitimate ID that gives them citizenship. But that's separate. These schemes have been around. We've found these schemes have been in the state databases since 2004, in other cases since 2007. So
they've been doing this a long time.
And you wonder how many people were in the U.S. Congress today were voted in by the algorithms, not by. So
you were able to stop the presidential cheat, but not the House or Senate?
Well, we're looking at that because I think right now one of the signs of the scheme being used is that they delay reporting the count. So they still are counting the House of Representatives. And we're very suspicious that some of the algorithms will be used to create Democratic votes to push the Democratic candidates over the top of the Republican challengers in the House of Representatives. We're very concerned about that.
So are you in contact with Trump and his team, his campaign? Are there other teams involved? I mean, was the military watching this at a certain level that you know of, or was this all we the people that did this?
Well, we don't know who did the algorithms. I suspect it's the intelligence.
No, I mean, who was watching it? I mean, obviously, we know the 3-letter agency groups are all behind this, but what I'm saying is they weren't expecting you or Trump to stop the steal. They were expecting, right now, all the Democrats, all the politicians are in a state of shock right now. They cannot believe they didn't steal it. They were confident, they were arrogant, and right now they're like in freeze mode. It's almost too eerily quiet. So,
we briefed Trump's team. We briefed anybody who wanted to be briefed. We worked with a lot of the groups around the country who were looking at the 2020 fraud. We made this very generally known. I mean, I've been at this nonstop since 12 hours, 14 hours a day since July. If you take a look at gods5stones.com and the videos, look at how many videos we've done, and they're all archived in there. You can watch them. We'll archive this video as soon as we get it. But again, so we widely, and we talk to people about how you detect these schemes. Now, let me show you exactly how they do this. So the Georgia Nerds, in a recent one of the videos on Rumble, the GA Nerds _real, they have a list
of that.
You can if you want. You might well take a look at it while we're talking. The GA Nerds, NERDS _real. That's how they are on X, and I think they're the same on Rumble.
GA Nerds.
Yeah, the GA Nerds.
And that's it. Where's the underscore?
After the nerds underscore, then it puts a separation there, underscored, and then REAL. This is the real Georgia Nerds on X. The real Georgia Nerds. So let's track with me. They found 3,000.
I see Professor Darren Hutchinson. What is this?
No. Okay, let's get you there. So if you go to X.
Okay.
And you type in the search THE GA NERDS, it pops right up. The GA NERDS. It should pop right up for you. It does for me.
Oh, am I having trouble with this? All right.
Let's take the time we've got.
The GA real nerds.
The GANERDS _ real at THE capital GA, all small NERDS _ real.
The GA nerds _ real.
Yeah. It should pop up for you. They're there.
Yeah. In election integrity?
Yes.
The election integrity community? Is that what it is?
Well, look, I
Operation and operator intel. Let me see if I got it right.
It's the election integrity community. Yes, you're looking at the right one. That's it.
Okay. Thank God.
It's a cat with glasses.
Slow or something.
It's a cat with blue lens glasses and says GA nerds. That's
so this is it, right?
This is it.
Okay.
Okay, and you can find them on Rumble too.
Okay.
Okay, now let me tell you about what they found. So they found 3,000 absentee votes that were cast by Georgia voters this year. So just recently, these 3,000 voted early, but they were not in the Georgia State Board of Election voter registration database. Okay, so voting without being in the database is illegal, and you can't do it. So what they did is they created these false voters, and they kept their false, but actually assigned voter ID on the voter registration database long enough to vote them and get that vote counted. Then they took them off of the database so you couldn't find them anymore.
Wow. Wow. Okay? Clever.
So among the illegal absentee.
So can I ask you something? Does this prove to you that Trump is some kind of operation? Because he would not be able to do this himself. Just some billionaire man running for office. He has to have a lot of people helping him to do something this elaborate, to stop a cheat this elaborate, right?
Well, I think what we did is, we contributed this with all the videos we've been doing. We've told people, here's the signs you look for, that the candidate like Kamala Harris isn't doing very well. And then suddenly she starts surging, and mail-in ballots are coming in, and they're coming in for her predominantly.
Right.
And then, so when you see that happening, you know the steal is on. And if they stop the counting like they're doing with these congressional votes, and they drag it out, well, the steal's probably on. They're probably
right. And then you receive these flash dumps, correct?
Yes, you get these big dumps, and so because we educated the state supervisors of these elections, we did a lot of education. Said, here's what you look for. So some group comes in and they bring you 2,500 mail-in ballots. One group in a big basket brings you 2,500. Those are probably manufactured. Those are probably illegal. Better check them. They probably have all the same signature on them. You can probably find out they're clone votes. Well, the states started doing that. Pennsylvania, during this current election, had 3 or 4 counties that were blocking these bulk deliveries of mail-in votes to be counted because they recognized them as a fraud. They knew the characteristic. They looked at it. They opened some of them up. They said these are fake. They wouldn't put them into the count. Okay, so because what they do is that these 3,000 absentee ballots, they said some voted early in person, but nobody showed up at the poll with that person.
Right.
They just did it through the computer. The same as the absentee ballots for these 3,000. They didn't actually mail any ballots. They just generated them through the computer. They may have printed one out to run it through the tabulation machine, but if you looked at that, it would not have been folded. Okay, so the clones, then once they are voted, are then purged from the records. Okay, but again, the Georgia nerds found a case. This was a case from a voter who had moved to South Carolina. And so what the criminals had done was that the voter user ID and the voter voter ID number from the State Board of Election in Georgia was still on the record. So they voted that record in the computer. They created a clone.
Wow.
Then they got the original record off. They put the clone on and they voted the clone. Okay, so now they have 2 votes for that voter. Okay, and when they voted the clone, they took the real record off. When the clone voted, they put the real record back. So again, it was done entirely. So that voter voted twice, but the clone voted the second time.
And then they hide the clone.
Hide the clone. And in Georgia, they took 50,000 inactive voters that were purged, and they put them back into the list as active voters.
Wow.
Okay, wow.
And you only detected. Now, let's be fair here. You only detected their side doing this.
Well, they were. This time it was all done for Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Okay, but again, there's nothing to say that in 2016, some of the clones may have been the scheme of the algorithms might have been used to push Donald Trump over the top. I've been told that one of the things Hillary was screaming in the Peninsula Hotel when she lost was, why didn't you use the algorithms for me? And basically, Obama told her to shut up, that if she started doing that, they were going to come in and arrest her for treason.
So Obama really is calling the shots with all these people behind the scenes, huh?
I believe so. Yeah, I do
too. I've heard they left out of the country. I don't know if this is true. It's just rumors, but I'd be pretty scared if I were them, especially after that cease and desist that Trump put out just recently about anyone caught cheating is going to jail.
Well, and that I think Trump means that.
I do too.
Now, so in effect, the Georgia State Board of Election has two voter registration databases, one legal and the other illegal. But you can't really maintain a double voter registration list. So what they do is they have to use these cryptographic code algorithms have to be embedded in the State Board of Elections to allow criminals operating the illegal voting the ability to hide the illegally created votes until needed, then to retrieve them, which requires reversing the cryptographic code to retrieve them. Because, a code you take, if you're military and your commander, you want to send a message to the field, you code it, and you expect your military at the other end to have a code book and to decode it, to read it. So you code them, you have a cryptographic scheme to hide your marked cards in the deck, and then you have to have the code book to get those back out to play the marked cards. Okay, and they do the same with the votes. They use the cryptographic code in reverse to go find them and bring them out and vote them. And then once they are voted, they are erased. So they disappear. That's how the scheme is done.
Wow. There's no trace.
No trace. And so we found these in all these states, and in the time we had, we were able to find it in about 10 states, including 4 of the battleground states. And we let the authorities know in the states. We filed an official complaint with Ohio. Ohio investigated it. We filed complaints. We didn't so much spend money with time with lawyers and the like. We weren't questioning that any particular election had been stolen. We're just saying you can't have a secret code in a voter base legally that allows you to create false voters and hide them and vote them and give them legitimate IDs. So this is inherently a criminal scheme. And we want to know who put the scheme in there, how many times it's been used.
So you're a nonprofit.
We're a nonprofit.
Is there other nonprofits that you know of that did this as well, that monitored this election? Are you the only ones?
We're the only ones who found the algorithms and made a big deal of it. We're the only ones.
Were you working with Trump or not working with Trump?
We were not working. We informed the Trump team of what we were doing, but we were not working with the Trump team.
But that being said, so he must have known this already.
They knew it. They knew
how to stop the cheat. They were stopping it themselves then. So not necessarily you stopped the cheat. You monitored it as a third party, but he had somebody doing this as well, correct?
Well, after we showed the various groups who were putting people in the field to monitor the elections, including the people who were inside legally as monitors, we trained a lot of the groups to look for these things.
You trained them?
Yeah, we did. I mean, that's again part of, we talked to them and trained them. I don't want the cryptographic schemes in any election database because it's a criminal violation. In fact, I think it's treasonous because it undermines election integrity on purpose. So I don't care which candidates they support; they're wrong, and I wouldn't favor Donald Trump having one in. If the Trump campaign did this, they'd be traitors.
Right, I agree with you 100%.
Nobody can. I want this, but what we found was this is how the cheating has been going on.
Have you been able to trace it back to who it was?
No, I don't know who it was.
I've heard countries involved, like Venezuela.
China. Well, I think what happened is my hunch is this was a unit within the CIA that did this, and that they worked with Five Eyes, which is the intelligence agencies we work with around the world: Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and us. And I believe we saw the European elections, for instance, just recently for the Parliament. The first ballot, the Conservatives were doing very well. Le Pen was surging in France, for instance. Second ballot, they came out the left woke up and the left surged. So the left won the second ballot. Well, I called up in France and Italy and said, are they surging at the polls? I said, Dr. Corsi, there's nobody here at the polls. The surge is occurring in the machines. And the same thing in Venezuela. They stopped the counting, and then when they started again, there were enough votes for the revolutionary candidate who hates the United States to win. Okay, and so therefore, once we could teach people what to look for, they knew that the signs were that the cheat was on, and now they could find it. And then we had a district court decision. I've only got about 5 more minutes.
So you gave them markers.
We gave them markers. We trained them what to look for. And, we said, if you want to catch this, you want to stop it, here, you've got to watch for it, and you've got to raise red flags. There was also a district court decision in September 27, 2024. It was district court, federal court for the District of Arizona. And this was American Encore versus Adrian Fontes. He was the Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, in Arizona. The case was a 2022 case where Cochise County did not certify the election because they thought the midterm election, the voting machines were switching votes and they wanted to do a hand count. Well, Adrian Fonte said they were not allowed to do a hand count. And so therefore, Cochise County refused to certify the election. Well, Fontes had written an election procedures manual that said if a county doesn't meet the deadline to canvass the election, the canvass meaning certify, that he didn't have to take that county into consideration. He could certify the other counties, and then he could certify the state without Cochise County. So this U.S. District Judge, Michael Liberty, who had experience, by the way, in the Arizona State Legislature, said this was unconstitutional because the voters of Cochise County were denied their right to vote, their voting rights, because they were thrown out of the final count. And he was very, very forceful about this. The opinion left no doubt. He said, in this case, the court need not opine on the plaintiff's harm because the injury is clear and compelled by the procedures manual in an unprecedented manner. Should a county fail to canvass the election, all votes in that county will be excluded. And he said that violated clearly the 14th Amendment franchise rights of the citizens of Cochise County. Now, this meant, and we have taught the supervisors, that any supervisor, board of supervisors in any state, in any one county, can shut down the certification in that state of the election because they don't go along with it. And they can't be overridden by the Secretary of State. This is a U.S. District Court. It's presidential. It hasn't been decided by the Supreme Court yet, but it's a precedent. And what that means is they can say, wait a minute, we're not certifying this election. We want to inspect the mail-in ballots. We want to see if the signatures match the signatures on the registration cards. We want to see who signed these ballots. Did one name sign 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 ballots? They want to know, were the ballots folded? Or were they really mailed? Are there any signs of postmark? Let's go out and sample 100 people and see if they were really there or if their names are fictional.
Was it all coming from one like database that was cheating, or was it multiple around the country? Was it out? Could you trace where it was coming from, the cheat?
No, I mean, these algorithms are different in each state.
Okay.
So some states have a different number scheme to order it, but in every state we looked at, we found, okay, so we enumerated the states: New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and then Arizona and Texas.
And Arizona's still in play right now, right?
Yes, and we're about to start looking at the congressional House seats to see if we can see signs of the algorithms being used.
Wow.
We're about to do it. We're about to do an analysis to see what's happening down there. So each state has a slightly different version of the algorithm, but they all do the same thing. They reorder the voters' numbers so you can create false voters that are clones or duplicates or made up votes, but they look like real votes. Because you'd have to see the two together to know that was a double. Just look at one, it looks okay.
Right.
You know, it's like if you look at a marked card in a deck, all the cards are random, so you don't know that card is marked. But see, the point is, if you play 21 in a casino that's using marked cards, that casino can't prove you lost any hand. And so now we're getting approached by candidates that I lost my election in a state where you found an algorithm, and I want to know if the algorithm beat me or if the voters beat me.
Got you.
So now we're starting to look at some of those. God's Five Stones is going to continue.
Okay.
We're raising more money, and we're going to look at more states, and we're going to find all the fraud we can find in this election. And there was a lot less of it because people were alerted to how the scheme worked.
I heard they were stopping people with trucks and ballots.
Yes, they were, because again, we said that's how they do it. They bring in these trucks and they're full
flash
of ballots.
Dump. Boom. That's why the pandemic was so important to them. They needed that to happen so they could steal this damn election. That's how they did the mail-in and the flash dumps.
But by our work, we stopped the steal because it's like a magician's trick is only a trick as long as you go along the misdirection and you don't know how but once you're in on how the trick is done and you see that the magician pulled the rabbit out of his coat and not out of the hat, there's no longer a trick anymore.
Right.
And you can't be fooled by it. So you see all these trucks pulling up and they got ballots in them. You know the steal is on. You're not going to let those ballots in.
I have to jump on another podcast right now. I'm so happy you popped up. Can we continue this? Can we do another segment?
Sure. We got one scheduled, I think, for the 12th. We'll do another.
Right. You know what? All right, folks. This is epic. This is huge. This was an accident. I did not even know I had him today. He didn't either. He just popped up on my screen. I said, "Who's this?" Boom. Clicked on it, and here we are. This is big.
It was my mistake. I had the wrong date in my database, my calendar, when we were going to do the interview. So,
oh my gosh. Well, that's
how it happened.
I'm glad this happened. So God's will be done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jerome Corsi, folks. Best-selling author, New York Times, PhD out of Harvard. God's Five Stones. I'll put the link down below, and folks, check them out. And then we'll do another one soon. We're going to be doing it soon.
Anytime you want.
Okay. Thank you, Jerome.
Anytime.